Good morning and welcome to the Queen's Table. We are so happy this morning to have with us a very special guest from the NOIR Center over in Orlando, as well as our very own Miss Tanisha Taylor Hyman with us as well. You've met Tanisha before, but today we have a very special guest, Dr. Peters from the NOIR Center. Good morning, Dr. Peters.
Good morning.
We are so happy to have you with us today, and I'm very excited about the topic that we're going to cover today. And it's not really just one topic; it's a few topics, kind of all together. It covers a lot of ground, I think, and I think I want to start off by saying we had a question in one of the previous episodes where I think, Phil, you were asking me
Ooh.
how young people feel about history. Why are young people no longer interested in learning their history?
Yes.
And so we talked about how they feel like it's full of trauma. It's full of trauma, and they're not really interested in learning about it for that reason. And I made the comment back to you that I feel like if we leave the trauma behind, we leave a lot of our story behind, because unfortunately the Black story is full of a lot of trauma. But if we don't actually look at it in the face, then we don't also understand how resilient our people have been throughout history. So in the comments,
Oh Lord,
someone
you're going over there now.
I
Oh
am.
man, I didn't know we were going to take that direction. Okay.
Okay, I wanted to start there because I want to make sure that not just our people, but also other cultures understand why we talk about this. Because people don't understand that this is a real thing, that racial trauma is a real thing, and that it affects us right now in the present. So in the comments, we have people saying, oh, get over it. Oh, get over it. It was a long time ago. And they don't understand that what happened back then impacts not just us individually, but impacts our people now. So I wanted to reach out to the NOIR Center. That Why don't you tell us about your center, Dr. Peters? Tell us, give us the history. Tell us what you guys do.
So, the NOIR Center is located in Winter Park, Florida. It's a little suburb outside of Orlando. And in 2020, I decided to change the name from Boundless Living Coaching, Counseling, and Consulting to the NOIR Center because, one, I'm a Black woman and living in America, and I saw how taboo kind of therapy was for Black Americans. And some of the things that I was hearing was, oh, people won't understand. And we know some of the challenges that individuals face as it relates to finding a clinician that
Absolutely.
they can see themselves in.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to create a safe space for Black and brown people who look like me to have a place to just be. I don't have to worry about only giving you my depression or my anxiety, but I could also give you my racism based stress and trauma as well, because we know that is a totally different layer of weight and heaviness and stress that individuals carry as it relates to living in America and being Black.
Yep.
So the NOIR Center caters to that specifically. Now, we do see anyone, we don't discriminate, but our focus is on emotional wellness for Black individuals.
I love it. I love it.
Yes.
So I would like for you to please give us just a working definition of racial trauma.
Okay, so you have racial trauma or race-based traumatic stress. So
Okay.
more frequently, you'll probably see race-based traumatic stress. And that just simply refers to a specific mental or emotional harm. So a wound, an impact that's linked to racism and discrimination. So that's the
Okay.
simplified definition.
Okay. Okay. And Tanisha, you got anything to add to that? You've been pretty quiet over there.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to interrupt or anything, but I'm heavy on TikTok. So I did have a person I was following. He was a Black therapist, and he had a lot of things to say about um, non-Black therapists when they get Black clients and how they just automatically write them off as, oh, you're fine. This is just this, it's this, that. And they don't get down to the root of, yes, this person has racial based trauma, because the other therapists don't really believe in that, and they don't do their research to help their Black and brown clients. So that's why I was just like sitting back and like taking it all in what she was saying, because
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, I have seen and I have heard this before. This is an actual thing that's happening.
Yeah, and I know that I have in the past when I've looked for a therapist, I've struggled to find someone. I don't know if it's just in this area, but I've struggled to find a therapist of color, someone that I felt comfortable with, that could understand that how racism plays into some of the things that we experience in our now. But you were telling me, Dr. Peters, that as a therapist, that you had a situation that happened to you that kind of surprised you as far as getting pulled over. You want to share that with us?
Yes, I will. But before I share that story, I want to comment on something that was said. Yes, it's because some of the therapists do not believe that racism based trauma exists. Another reason is they themselves are not comfortable with talking about racial issues with their client. So if I'm not comfortable talking about something, I'm not going to even bring it up.
Yeah.
And so if I don't bring it up, if I am, let's say I'm a non-Black clinician and I have a Black client that I am working with, and I'm working with them on depression, I may not even consider that race could be a factor because of the privileged vantage point that I have.
Right.
Yes.
And so when we talk about culturally aware clinicians and making sure that they are aware that not everybody may have the privileges that they have, being aware that there are certain nuances depending on the culture that you are working with, or even the individual sitting in front of you. Because it's not just Black people who experience racism-based trauma or race-based traumatic stress. But for the topic and for my center, that's what we focus on. And so I just wanted to also add to the point of them not believing in it, but the fact that they themselves are not comfortable. And I do a training where I challenge clinicians to really get real about their own feelings, whether it's their guilt, whether it's their disbelief, whether it's their, I don't know, I don't want to be one of those people. No, because as clinicians, it is our job to make sure we are exploring all of the things that could be contributing to why my patient is presenting the way that they are presenting in my office.
Yeah.
Dr. Peters, I got a question for you. You kind of sparked my interest here in the medical community. Just for me being a patient with stuff, I've witnessed a lot of medical gaslighting, right? When it comes to therapies and your colleagues who aren't Black, when they deal with Black patients, do you find out that there's some sort of gaslighting that they do?
Yes. And I say that's actually one of the things that I go over in the training. Because if you say things, so as therapists, we are trained to challenge our clients. So we want to challenge them because sometimes we have irrational beliefs. Sometimes we have shifts in our thinking that need to take place because we might not be seeing something perceptually as the reality of what it is, because feelings are not facts. But when it comes to microaggressions, when it comes to racism, there can sometimes be this feeling or this undercurrent. It's not really direct, it's kind of subtle, but we know it just doesn't feel right. And so if I'm speaking to my therapist and I'm saying to them, they were following me because I was Black, because I didn't see them do that to anybody else. We minimize and discount that Black person's experience if we challenge them, which we've been taught to do, and say, what evidence supports your belief that they were following you because they were being racist? And so there's a very delicate line as it relates to challenging the client versus being supportive and listening to them, specifically when it comes to situations and topics of racism and race-based interactions.
Right.
So yes, that gaslighting absolutely does go on. And so that's why I think it's very important for anybody to make sure you're listening and holding space for your clients so that you're not missing or minimizing their experience.
That it makes me it reminds me of how we say Black women in the medical system get treated, they're more likely to pass away when they're having a baby and that sort of thing. So it reminds me of that. So basically what we're saying is that that doesn't just show up in health, like physical health, but it also shows up in the mental health industry. That sometimes,
Absolutely.
where it's dismissed. We know what we're feeling, but we almost have to justify and prove what we're feeling. So
Especially when you have a clinician who doesn't see color. And that's one of the things that I clearly don't understand, because a lot of people think that just because I don't see color, I can't be racist.
That makes you even more racist than me.
No, because if you don't see color, you don't see my experience, you don't see me, you don't see my story, you don't see my background, you don't see my struggle. And as a clinician, how can you holistically treat me without seeing those parts of me?
Right. And if you're going to say that, first of all, we're starting off from a place of not being truthful. So at that point, if you don't see color, I'm walking out the door.
Yes.
Because if you don't see color, you don't see me
Immediately.
So shouldn't if we're going by that logic, shouldn't just Black therapists just only have Black patients then? Because you're kind of putting a big task on those other races that they haven't experienced this stuff, but you're making it almost harder for them.
So I would say no. I would say if you are competent enough to hold space for someone who doesn't look like you, because you know that your training has to continue and you do the work to make sure that you are capable of providing quality care to anyone who comes in your office, then I'm okay with you continuing to see people who do not look like you.
Yeah, you have to educate yourself. You have to make the effort. If this is your chosen field, make the effort to know everything that you need to know about that field. And it's
Right.
like saying that a white doctor can't treat sickle cell. It's a disease that mainly happens to Black people. Educate yourself on it.
Yeah,
Well, I
but
would
isn't that
say
medical? That's different though. Sorry. To me, that's a little different though, because you're talking about the mental side, which is experiences, right, versus a medical thing that just happens to someone's body.
But either way, they are professionals that deal with that area.
but that would mean, I'm sorry, that would mean me as a female clinician, I would not be able to treat men because they have a male experience. So you have to look at it from that way as well. That would mean Black clinicians can't treat white clients. That's not universally true. And so I think that individuals have to be comfortable with themselves. Not everybody experiences racism-based trauma. And so there may be some individuals who feel more comfortable going to someone else. I'm going to give you an example. My daughter, I'm a therapist, been a therapist her entire life. She'll be 17 next month. When she started looking for a therapist, she said, "Mom, I don't want a Black therapist." My initial reaction was the audacity.
Yes.
And then she explained to me, she said, "Mom, I feel like all Black therapists will be like my mom. They will not be able to be objective because you're a Black woman therapist who's my mom. I don't want to feel like I'm talking to an auntie or anything like that."
Yes.
I said, "Okay, well, go out there and find you a therapist that you want." She tried it. someone who wasn't Black. It was not her cup of tea. She came back over to this side and she said, okay, Mom, I found another one. And so she's been with her therapist for about 3 years now. She absolutely loves her therapist. She is a Black woman. She does not act like her mom. But I had to give her the freedom to be able to see what fits for her.
Yeah.
Different backgrounds, different experiences. Some people may feel a little bit more comfortable. But what I would say is, if you're not comfortable with talking about race, and I don't care if you're Black or other, that's not something you should be treating. That's why individuals, it's important to know what your limits are as it relates to different things that may come up.
Okay. I wanna switch directions just a little bit. And so this racial trauma thing that we're talking about, I want to ask a question. Does it hit men differently? First of all, how does it show up? Are there some ways that someone walks into your office and you can identify that this is what they're dealing with as opposed to something else? How does it actually show up in your clients' lives?
So sometimes it's, avoiding situations that remind them of past racist experiences. So if I went into this store and I know that I felt like I was followed, I might start avoiding. So I'm never going to go into that store again because I'm reminded, I'm triggered, and it reminds me of how I was treated.
Yeah.
There are also the distrust of others, distrust of we were talking about medical earlier. That's why some people don't necessarily go to the doctors and go get checked out or see therapists, because there's a mistrust of professionals as it relates to medical care. I don't know if you're going to hear me. I don't know if you're going to believe me. I don't know if you're going to be able to hold space for me. Some of the other things is hypervigilance and paranoia. So those are some things as it relates specifically to race-based trauma within your clients if they are coming in and talking about this. One of the other things is when you are the only at work. That's a huge thing that I deal with, right? And so when you have all these other coworkers and they have an issue if you kind of stay to yourself, because they want for you to be by the water cooler, having conversations and everything. And then I have an attitude, or what they feel like, oh, you have an attitude. You don't want to come join in with us. You don't want to go to happy hour with us. And so now I'm othered, or I am excluded. I already was feeling alone on the island, but I'm just coming to work. I'm just doing my job. And now I have this other invisible layer of weight because I don't want to be the angry Black woman. Right. I don't want to be the mean one. I don't want to be the one with the attitude, so we just have to always put on this face and say, hi, guys, regardless of what is happening in life. And one of the biggest questions that I got during the height of COVID, every podcast that I would do that was mental health related, they would say, have you seen an increase of patients since COVID? And my honest answer was no. The biggest challenge that my clients that we discuss in therapy is this social injustice in America as it relates to Black people.
Absolutely.
How some of my clients would just come in my office and sob because I have to go to work every day and they expect for me to show up and produce exactly the same amount that I was producing prior to me dealing with this social injustice. And no one seems to care. No one seems to hear me. No one is asking, okay, you seem different. No one is noticing. And it's heavy.
Yeah.
That's what my clients were experiencing.
Yeah. And I mean, I identify so much with that. The other one at work, the only one at work. I think I dealt with that for about maybe 5 years. And didn't know that it was one of those things where I didn't know people were coming into therapy talking about it. If I had, I probably would have found a therapist myself. Because I'm telling you, man, that is that's rough stuff when you're coming in every day and there's this expectation that you're like you said, you come to happy hour, or you do this, or you do that, or you're the angry black woman,
Mm-hmm.
or people are
Mm-hmm.
tiptoeing around you because they don't know how to treat you because you don't. And I noticed that when a few moments ago when you said we have to come in and go hi, but we always raise our voice a little bit, because the natural timbre of our voice intimidates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
walking in
That's
their boots.
you have to be someone else in order
Yes,
for everyone else to be comfortable,
Yeah,
and the weight of that, day after day is just it's traumatic. It is, and you learn how to
absolutely.
be somebody else.
This just sparked a question, and I want everybody to answer this though. In your own personal opinion, do you think that a lot of people, a lot of black people, don't even know that they've experienced racial trauma?
yes, right off the rip. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say absolutely because it's the way of life. Because if
Yeah,
you hadn't, why do you feel like you need to code switch?
exactly.
Oh,
To
yeah,
fit
and
in?
That's
I
good.
had that conversation before about that. And
That's
then I
good.
wanted to touch base on I was never the other, but I had to be the advocate for the other, if that
Mm,
makes sense.
mm-hmm.
Why is
Mm-hmm.
so and so mean? Do you think she's just mean? No, she's not mean. She's just being herself. She's minding her business. But anyway, what we talking about? Like, what we gonna do today? And it's like always having to defend the other because they don't have the energy to defend themselves.
But that right there makes you an other. Because what in the world makes you have to be the translator between those two cultures?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you have to carry that?
I don't know. They
You know
be
what I'm
asking
saying?
me.
Yeah, and if they, I'm not gonna go there, but it does make you an other
You
because
should go
then,
there.
Yeah.
well, I was
Safe space. This is
what
this is for YouTube.
Yeah.
This is for the YouTube comments.
Yeah.
All the people in there saying, "Get
well,
over it. Listen to this."
well, it has left my mind at this point, but I just what makes them feel that they can, whoever they are, that they can put that extra burden on you of being the translator. And that's what I was about to say. If I was in the situation and they came and asked me, why is so and so acting like that? Are you asking me that because she's black and I'm black? Why don't you go ask her? Go ask her what she's thinking. I'm not the translator. I'm not the go between. So figure it out. And it reminds me of when we said right at the beginning of the whole everything that was happening racially in our country. It is not my job to educate you. Don't put that extra burden on me to educate you about what's happening here. Go educate yourself. We have enough of a burden on us, right?
Right.
So anyway, I'm gonna get off that soapbox. But the other thing I wanted to ask was as far as how this shows up in people. I love that answer that you gave before. But do you see it? Do you see a difference between how it shows up in men and how it shows up in women?
I would say women tend to be more vocal about it
Mm-hmm.
versus men. When it comes to men, overall blanketly speaking, it people might not notice it and notice that there's a difference because we're so used to doing it. And so
Yeah.
race-based trauma shows up in women because more women also tend to code switch than men
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Absolutely.
So you
Yeah.
see more of that. And then men, they just isolate and
Yeah.
avoid more. Women more code switch
Mhm.
more. Men tend to more isolate and avoid.
Can you explain what code switching is for those who
Okay.
are culturally ignorant?
So code switching is when I feel see that little thing that I did, that was a code.
Yeah.
So code switching is when our voices get lighter or higher pitched and our mannerisms probably change, and it happens so fluidly.
Mm.
You sometimes you don't even know that you're doing it because you had to do it so much. So basically it's changing, not intentionally, but just changing who you are based on or how you present yourself,
Mm-hmm.
your
Mm-hmm.
vernacular, your mannerisms, depending on who's around.
I
So,
did it
for
twice.
example, my daughter, she always says this, Mommy, you have on your corporate voice. That's not how you say it. I'm like,
Oh, you're talking about your
working
customer
it.
service voice.
Yes, 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 and yes.
So, especially if, and we do it because we ourselves are not confident and comfortable in showing up authentically as who we are. Because for so many years, us just being who we were was looked down upon. So maybe some of the African American vernacular English, maybe some of the words that we use were like, that's beneath us, that's ghetto. So you try to make sure that you are showing yourself or presenting yourself in a light that is socially acceptable to the
This culture,
individuals
The
that
audience, yeah.
this
society feels
culture.
is above us. And so
Yeah.
it's almost like and sometimes I'm not going to say I would get in trouble, but when you show up as yourself, again, that can be taken as, oh, she's a little rough around the
Yeah.
edges. No,
Yeah.
this is just me being direct. And so sometimes my directness has to be altered because it makes it more palatable for you to be able to receive it and swallow it.
Right.
But why do I have to change who I am? No, you need to check who you are and ask yourself, why is my delivery, if I'm not being demeaning, I'm not being condescending, I'm not being threatening, but you're still perceiving it as those things. You have to ask yourself, what is it about what I'm saying that's causing you to be uncomfortable? Because that's not my issue, that's a you issue. And so if
Absolutely.
we get comfortable, and we have to stop this, oh my gosh, you talk white. What is talking white? I'm just speaking phonetically and pronunciating and enunciating my words the way that I am supposed to. And so that's a whole nother issue within the
Yeah,
culture.
it is.
You
That's a
talk very
classic of like our
articulate.
community. Yeah.
Yeah. Or just being there's a few things that you said that I kind of want to unpack a little bit. And one of them, the code switching thing, you were saying that it's sometimes because I think you said it's sometimes because we feel that we have to, I think.
Yeah, sometimes you do. Because if you go into a workspace, you can see, I'm gonna say Shirley, the receptionist at an office. The way that she shows up at her job when people come in, hi, good morning.
Yeah.
It's not the way she is at home or
Right.
at church on Sundays.
Right.
Right.
So that does that. It's not the same. I'm not saying that that's not her authentic self, but it's a little bit more colorful when that happens. The other thing is, and for the people in the comments, I want to make sure I'm clear. I am fully aware that yes, you have to be mindful of where you are. I will not be using the street slang in my corporate office, probably not likely. So yes, there is a time and place for everything, but when you're putting it on a little bit more extra, instead of me just saying, hi, good morning, and I'm saying, hi, good morning, that is code switching.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that. I used to be in sales, and we would get white people come in. I'm like, hi sir, how are you? Or we get somebody that looked like me. Like, hey, what's up, man? So I understand. I'm guilty.
Yeah, there's that very famous clip of Barack Obama shaking hands with people.
He dapping up. He dapped up those heels.
Yes.
And I don't know, it's something about that there's something about that actually just kind of warms my heart, because we can in those spaces embrace each other a little differently. I love that. And at the same time, he was professional enough or he was knowledgeable enough to be the president and know how to act, know the right decorum for the other situation.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I love that in our own spaces that there's this exhaling, when we are in our own
Yes.
spaces. I love that part of it because it's all like when we say you can come to the barbecue.
Yeah,
You know,
come to the cookout. You're invited
right,
to the
right,
cookout.
right. You can come to the cookout because you can see me in my non-corporate space. You know, so there's some beauty in that, I think, and there's something about our culture that when we are in our own spaces and we are exhaling, it's just it's lovely.
One of the
But
things that I say about the some of the clients, they're just like, if they're trying to explain a situation, or they may use like a term or something, I'm like, I'm following, I got you. It was like, oh, I'm so glad I have a Black therapist. And maybe not all Black people will understand what they're saying, but for the most part, we
yeah,
have a lot of similar experiences and background. And so when they're trying to explain a story and they use a slang word, I'm like, I'm picking up
yeah,
what you're putting down.
yeah,
I
yeah,
got
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Go
Yeah.
ahead. Or when they're like, we can celebrate each other, so and culturally it is very different, because I don't know how many Caucasian therapists will feel comfortable with saying yes, okay, to their clients. But I do that all the time when we are celebrating, and we all
yeah,
have our little kikis in the
Mhm.
therapy office. It What I've been told by my clients, it makes them feel warm. They feel like, yes, this is the healing space I
yeah,
need to be
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, and I feel like we haven't quite. I always feel like this at the end of an episode, but I feel like we haven't quite gotten exactly where I wanted to go because I definitely want to speak to women about, especially women, about
in.
now how we get through those difficult times of how we recognize when that racial trauma is impacting us and how we walk through it, how we heal from it. So I don't think we have enough time in this episode to go there, but
But I
I
have a few
definitely.
things I can give.
Okay, go ahead,
Yeah.
please, please.
So if and you said specifically for the women. So one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that you want to do is be aware. You want to be able to make sure that you're checking in with yourself. Another thing is you want to make sure that you don't withdraw or disconnect. You want to stay connected with your friends and family, and you want to find those safe spaces so that you can discuss your thoughts and your emotions more freely. You also want to engage in activism. So if you feel helpless or hopeless and you are experiencing these racial things around you, it would be good to engage in empowering activities where you can feel like you're actually doing something for the cause. And then you want to also engage in mindfulness. If you're spiritual, you want to make sure you're praying, you want to meditate, you want to do yoga, you want to do something that is gives you mindfulness. And limit your social media use. There's a lot of
No.
negative
What? No.
things.
Why? No. No.
Yes,
No.
yes.
No.
When you
No.
feel
No.
overly stimulated, it can increase your depression and your anxiety. So if
Never.
you need to take a break from absorbing all of the negative things that's causing you to feel heavy,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it is emotionally beneficial to take a break.
Can we say change what they're watching on social media or
Because
change the
yeah,
channel?
You
when I
you-
get on TikTok and I start on my For You page, it really just helps me like, oh yeah, I'm out of where my mind space is, and I'm not. I'm ha ha la la.
but
Like,
but
oh
so
yeah.
so that's good. But guess what? If all I'm watching on my For You page, everything that's coming up is a lot, I might have to disconnect,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
maybe my searches are not those of just grandmas and TikTok or the
yeah,
babies, throwing
yeah,
food or whatever. It
Yeah.
might be a lot and overly
yeah,
stimulating.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
there's a good, healthy balance. And so there's nothing wrong with it. And when I'm talking about social media, I'm even talking about the journals and the news and everything, because it's
Yes.
in our hand, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
if I have CNN popping up all the time on my feed,
Yep.
on my phone, anything socially that's media that I'm watching,
Mhm.
that's what I consider as social media.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, that might not be the working definition for it, but that is what I consider as we have to disconnect from it, because the news can be very like, oh my gosh, I
It's
woke up in a
depressing.
great mood.
Yeah, it can
And
be.
now it's
Yeah.
like, oh, whoa, okay, that's a lot.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Okay. So Dr. Peters, thank you so much for
Thank you.
thank you for those words of wisdom at the end there too, of course. And we are going to close this episode because we've got to get Dr. Peters to the classic. If y'all haven't been noticing those FAMU nails as she's been
FAMU? Okay,
speaking today, but just wanted to thank you again for being on with us, and we're definitely going to have you back because there's so much more to kind of to expand on here, and I want to make sure that our communities are getting tools to use.
Hmm.
And then we
Hmm.
also have to talk about how racial trauma impacts dating relationships and how it impacts how we engage with each other. So,
Absolutely.
so we will definitely have you
Yeah.
back. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
will disconnect.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.